Good evening and welcome to the Rise Talkshow. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have an interesting conversation for you. Today we have Professor James Chin, one of Malaysia's most respected political scholar and a proud Sarawakian from Kuching, who despite 3 decades abroad still speaks on Malaysian politics for some reason. And of course, with clarity of someone who has never left Malaysia. He recently spoke on Negeri and as well on Johor. And he actually called them correctly. His analysis is sought by multiple news media online such as BBC, New York Times, Bloomberg. And in Malaysia is known as for fearlessly speaking on MA63 for Sabah and Sarawak's rights and many other things as well, especially the non-Muslim rights. He is currently Professor of Asian Studies at University of Tasmania and Senior Research Fellow at Utah. So, Professor James Chin, please. Hi, how are you?
Thank you very much for your kind invitation to come to this podcast.
Thank you. So, let's just get started. I'm sure you know about the recent podcasters such as Brian and also Shamsul Saad. What do you think about that, Professor?
So I think it's very, very troubling. It's very troubling not because the arrest happened, but it's very troubling what happened before the arrest. So if you listen to their lawyer, I think it's been confirmed that their lawyers were both is Siti Kasim. She alleged that the arrest doesn't follow the normal pattern. So for example, right, she says it in a video very clearly. It should not have happened because both the podcasters Sam and Brian were willing to go to the police station. Normally, if they want to arrest you or something, or they want to take a statement, the police will contact you and ask you to make time to visit the balai. So everything was sorted out, and yet the police suddenly came to the house and arrested Brian. And of course, when Samsu showed up at the police station, he was arrested as well. The other strange thing was that, for me at least, right, according to what we know, prior to the arrest, there was only like 4 or 5 or even 6 police reports, a very, very small number of police reports. And yet the police immediately jumped on top. You and I, have been watching Malaysia for a very long time. There was a group of people with hundreds of police reports.
Thousands even.
Yeah. And somehow, the police doesn't see the need to jump onto the bandwagon and immediately go to their house. Not to even say arrest them, don't even ask them to come to the balai to give a statement.
Okay.
So I think it's very troubling from that aspect. I'm not saying don't enforce the law. Of course, the police has the right to enforce the law, and people make reports, the police will investigate. But I'm just saying that I think there is a lot of suspicion that this thing was being rushed. And that the police went along with it. But again, we wouldn't know the full story until the case is heard before the courts. But of course, given the fact that they were released 1 day early, we can also take the position that maybe this thing will not end up in court, because the police always have the option. Most people don't know, right? The police have the option of NFA, no further action. They don't even have to pass the paper, and that will be the end of the story. But it's interesting that Brian also told me that the police has not returned all the equipment that they took from him. So that will take quite some time. But whatever it is, I think most lawyers will agree with Siti that maybe the thing was a bit rushed. But I'm sure we'll get the full story because Siti has a very active social media platform, and I'm sure she'll come back to this story very soon, especially since that she's also very worried about this issue. The thing that also bothers me is the fact that, I was shocked that not a lot of NGOs and other people who support media and freedom of speech, I was surprised that not many people came up with a statement. In fact, only one DAP politician came up with an open statement asking what was happening. I think a lot of us, like I said, we are bothered by the timeline. We're not bothered by the fact that the police are doing their job. We're just saying that the police are doing their job too well.
Okay. Well, Prof, I have a counter argument to this. We do know that Brian and Samsul Saad was speaking about Tafiz schools and a whole lot of those other things as well. Now, My question to you, if we let podcasters say anything about religion as how they want, don't you think the country will descend into chaos and racial riots? What do you think about that?
I don't buy the argument for a very simple reason that podcasting to me, right, is really the new medium or the new platform. We've always had a platform, as you know, right? In the old days before social media, there was this thing called surat layang and all that sort of thing. So you can virtually say whatever you want, and you know you're old enough to know that just 2 or 3 years ago, the big thing was this thing on Twitter at that time. They have a thing where people can get together, talk a lot. I can't even remember the name, but it was very, very big just a few years ago. And now we have this podcasting. So it's simply a new medium. People in Malaysia has always spoken what is on their mind. I think the reasonable ones will, of course, I'm not saying that they're not careful, but I'm saying that they themselves will be sort of take a sort of a more moderate positions. But the thing about social media is that the way the allegrams are written, the more extreme you are, the bigger your spread is. And that, unfortunately, is due to the technological platform rather than the changes in the way Malaysians talk about sensitive issues.
Okay. All right. So, but here's the thing. So, do you think this is an act where Malaysia is criminalizing opinions, or do you think this is just Malaysia trying to protect from people who are trying to wound religious feelings because of because they want to get likes and views on YouTube and whatnot? Going by your argument that this is just a way for people to get views.
No, I'm saying it's the allegrams that's driving this rage process. So people can still raise this issue, but if we go along your lines of argument, right, then the first thing I would say is that since you're thinking that this will lead to chaos in the country, that action must be taken, then it must be taken even-handedly. I mean, just 2 minutes ago, we were talking about people with hundreds and thousands of police reports and nothing happened. So I think at the end of the day, Malaysians are smart enough to understand where you're coming from. How should I put this? There are certain personalities in Malaysia, even before they open their mouth, right? Most people know exactly what they're gonna say. So
I think we can name them here. Ridwanti, we can. What's the other guy? The Chinese Mualaf guy. All those guys, right?
No, the point I'm gonna get is that people worry that this thing will lead to chaos and whatever it is. I can tell you, right, that is mostly not true, because even the podcast topic that you're talking about, right, this thing was already out there for a month until the police report that happened, right? The Malaysian government is famous for banning books. Many of those books they ban, right? You and I have never heard of it, right? They ban it.
Right.
So they're giving free publicity. So you can imagine, right? A lot of it, has not had that sort of, effects that the Malaysian government is alleging that it has. I mean, one of the great contradictions of our system is that, I don't know whether you know this, there's still currently a law that says that you cannot read the words of Karl Marx.
Wow.
Right?
In Malaysia.
In Malaysia. So you and I both know, right? Whatever you want to read is already scanned. Somebody will scan it and put it on the internet, right? So even things like banning books, right? What is the point of banning books when you can download it on the internet, immediately after this session? So there are lots of contradictions in the system. I can understand where your view is. Your view comes from a lot of people who are very scared that we will have a repeat of May 13th. And my argument is that that actually does not fit Malaysia in the year 2026 for many reasons. But the main reasons why it is unlikely that we will have a full-scale ethnic riot is because there are virtually no more ethnic enclaves in Kuala Lumpur, the major cities, right? If you look at the most expensive areas in Kuala Lumpur, places like Bukit Antara Bangsa, the Old Bangsa, all those places, right? You'll be amazed, right? In terms of ownership, right? It is actually quite well spread out. There is actually so-called a lot of rich upper-class Malays who live in those areas. So when you say go and burn those areas, you might be burning out the wrong houses. So I would say, and also don't forget, we have reached a stage where in order to get people out to do crazy stuff, it's not like in the old days you apply the sentiment. Nowadays, right, they want free
Yeah.
transport, they want
Yeah.
power food, they want
Yeah.
water bottles, they
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
free
Yeah.
T-shirts. It is not like in the old days you round the people out. So I don't think that sort of thing happens. There was a lot of fear before 2018, as you know, but now we are
Okay.
seeing four change of government. So I think all those things, I don't take it too seriously anymore.
Okay, but who do you think should be responsible for these kind of things? Now, who decides which speech is dangerous, which speech is not? Who do you think is at the end of the day responsible for moderating this?
The answer is the courts. So we actually have a very good system in place. We have lots of laws, especially under MCMC, and of course we have the Long-Standing Sedition Act. And if the media misbehaving, we have the Media Council. So all the
Okay.
laws are there. The question is what I said earlier is to apply that evenly across the board. The reason why
Mm.
people like you keep raising this issue is because you think that the system is not working properly. Otherwise, why would you raise the issue? Because you think that it's not being applied evenly. That's why you're saying that there is no system. But if the system is working properly, you and I won't be complaining about it anymore.
Hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Mm.
But what do you think about Prime Minister Anwar? I mean, obviously Anwar came into power maybe on the wave that this is going to be defending the principle of free expression. Do you think he should have done something about this?
Okay. To be fair to Anwar, if you look at the pillars of the Pakatan Harapan promises, right, freedom of expression is actually not there. You can look at it; it's actually not there. The bulk of the promises was about the economy, rising
Uh-huh.
income, standards of living, all that sort of thing. So freedom of
Okay.
expression is actually
It's
not
not
there.
one of it.
Yeah. So I think the question you're really asking about Anwar is that what is happening now, especially after Johor and Selangor. So I think
Okay.
several things is happening. The first
Mm.
point I want to make is that people don't talk about it, but this is the reality. The so-called unity government is dead. Okay? I
Okay.
mean, let's not
Mm.
fool ourselves. How can you have your partner sitting with you in a cabinet say everything is wonderful, and then at the state
Okay.
level they say really nasty things about you and fight you, right? So let's
Yeah.
kid
Yeah.
ourselves that we can separate the federal politics from the state
Mm.
politics. So the unity
Mm.
government is dead. So the real issue is whether UMNO will allow Anwar to hang on to power until GE16, the ending date. My take is that
Okay.
if UMNO wins Malacca, another Malay tsunami in Malacca, right? UMNO
Mm.
and Perikatan will push very hard to have an early general election because they do not want to lose the momentum. So in any case, unity government is dead. I think the second important point is something that newspapers is covering extensively, and that is the DAP is in chaos, especially
Ah.
after the loss of Secretary General, right? Your number
Yep.
one guy lost, although
Yes.
he lost by a very small margin, to be fair, he lost by a very small margin. Still, in the Malaysian game, you're either elected a YB or you're not elected a YB. There's no middle ground, right? So it is
That's
clear
right.
that the DAP is the crisis, and that's the
Mm.
reason why they have the DAP Congress coming out on the 16th of August, where the key
Mm.
question is whether the DAP should carry on
Mm.
participating in this government. We can talk a bit about that later. The third
Okay.
point is that, I think UMNO and PAS, the third point coming out of Negeri Sembilan and Johor is that UMNO and PAS has found the secret sauce. So the secret sauce
Okay.
is that they support each other in the rural areas.
Okay.
Combined
Mm.
together, that ideology of KMI, Ketuhanan Melayu Islam, right? That
Yeah.
ideology is unbeatable. So based on
Okay.
my own calculation,
Yeah.
assuming GE16 is held this year, I
Yeah.
predict that they can win up to 105 seats.
Wow.
Yes.
That's
This is
bold
just based on
prediction
the
there.
rural Malay seats. You know, right? The rural
Okay.
Malay seats account between 90 to 100. So they can actually
Yeah.
win all of them. Because traditionally in the Malay area, right, there's only two players in town, UMNO versus PAS. If these two players combine together, right, my
Okay.
argument is that there's no space for a third player. You are squeezed. So therefore,
Okay.
if this Malay tsunami holds, then UMNO and PAS under KMI will win up to 105 seats. The fourth
Okay.
point I want to make is that Sabah and Sarawak has lost their leverage. As you know, right,
Mm.
previously you really need Sabah and Sarawak to sort of
Sarawak
build a
to form
solid
government.
government. So
Yep.
now the only leverage they have is that they can provide the two-thirds number. So whoever forms the
Mm.
government, say assuming it's UMNO and PAS, when they come in, they
Yeah.
will provide the two-thirds buffer. The other thing is quite dangerous. The fifth point I want to make is that the Malay right wing now is really emboldened. Now that they see, their wet dream has always been that the so-called Malay unity, right, between UMNO
Yes.
and PAS, the two permanent enemies in the Malay political bubble, right? Now they've come together, so now their ultimate dream has been reached, so they are really emboldened. So you can see the sort of statements they're putting out is very different, say, before the Johor elections. The other point I want to make is that, unfortunately, the Chinese and the Indians political elites, right, have no answer to the Malay tsunami. I mean, you are very active in the Indian political space. You may disagree with me, but I would say that the Chinese and the Indian political elites have no answer to the Malay tsunami. Either they deflect the question or they say it's not real.
Will you call them spend electoral force then?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have any power.
So my point is that because for the very first time, that these people have no answer, I think is really, really dangerous for the community. My seventh point, I think, which is equally important, is that it is very clear under the KMI, the UMNO PAS combo, right? Their number one aim is to dial Malaysia back to pre-2018. They want to shift the whole political system back to pre-2018, where it is very clear is Malay dominance. Nobody can question that. You know the old joke under UMNO, right? Under 2018, right? Is under Mahathir, no opposition. UMNO.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
And my final point, and this is probably the most controversial thing I'm going to say in this podcast, is that because of this Malay tsunami that's coming, everyone's talking about it, right? There is no more middle voices in the Malay ground. Because suddenly the middle ground in the Malay community, right, they can see this Malay tsunami coming, right? Now they sort of, feeling the need to shut up. They don't want to say anything anymore. I don't know whether you feel it, but I feel it because I talk to people in Malaysia all the time. That's the wonderful thing about WhatsApp, free phone calls.
Okay, all right.
But you see, right, previously there were some voices in the Malay middle ground saying, let's move away from racial politics, let's not play this Kapamanangam, let's not call each other pendatang, all that sort of thing. All those voices are getting smaller and smaller because people can see this coming. And that to me is the really, really dangerous thing.
Okay, all right. I have a lot of questions for you.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first one.
Yes.
So, like you said just now, BN and PN, they have worked together informally as of this point right now to go against PH. Does that mean that's the blueprint for a future Malay Muslim unity bloc that will ultimately squeeze PH and probably Anwar out? Or do you think there's some other ideas forming in the background as well?
No, this is the thing that they know it works, and they're going to use it for GE16. So the issue is not whether they're going to use it against Pakatan. They're definitely going to use it at Pakatan. The issue is whether the UMNO leaders and the PAS leaders can come to understanding how they're going to divide up the federal government. As you know, right, I don't know whether you understand the Chinese word kantao. Your opportunity is kantao, right? All the kantao in Malaysia comes from two places. The government and especially the Prime Minister's office. So in terms of the Prime Minister's office, it is my understanding, and I stand to be corrected, that position will go to UMNO because the PAS people understand that a PAS Prime Minister is not widely accepted among the overall population. So that position will go to
UMNO. Point right now, not maybe for the next two decades.
No, I'm talking about GE16. I'm assuming that they come together. If they win, right? Then we will see UMNO Prime Minister, and that PAS will end up with the most important ministries, which means that they've got plenty of kantao to give out. But my point about GE16 is that if UMNO and PAS wins, right, they're gonna dial the clock back to the past, and that they're gonna create the pre-2018 political environment. So that's what they're gonna do.
Okay, Prof, but I want to ask you, is this really a case of BN getting stronger, or is this a case of DAP getting weak because they were not really answering their reform calls and promises that they did before this?
No, this is pure mathematics. Like I said, if you look at the Malay majority seats, those with 70% and above, if you look at, electoral data, say from 2008 onwards, right? In the rural areas, it was essentially PAS and UMNO, and after that, Bersatu broke in. So they will break into three pieces. And now, if you combine the votes of PAS and UMNO, right, they're unbeatable. How should I put it? Bersatu has just dropped off the map already. All the talented people in Bersatu are now in Wawasan, which is part of Perikatan. So there is no space for a third player in the Malay seats. There's virtually no room. I mean, you think about it, right? Traditionally, in the Malay area, say 80% or 90%, right? The only game in town is between PAS and UMNO. And usually, the winning margin is quite small. Huh? So if these two combine together, right, there's no space for any other player.
Okay, all right. Do you think PH can't reinvent itself at this point? I mean, they are talking with Bersatu and Muda and the rest. Don't you think that there is a new mix that they can do to basically reinvent themselves for the next election?
They can, but don't forget, if UMNO gets his way, right, GE will be held before the end of this year. You don't have time to put the thing together. Because once you win Malacca, right, you have a very, very strong momentum. You don't want to lose the momentum. And don't forget, there is a large block of UMNO people who really, I'll let you into a big secret. You know what has always been the big prize for UMNO? People think that UMNO want to win the northern so-called Malay belt states like Kelantan and Terengganu. I can tell you, right, among the UMNO elites, right, that is not the prize. What do you think is the prize for UMNO? What do you think is the prize?
I think they want to win KL and Selangor.
That's right. Because that is where the economic power is, and that's where the money is. And if they can, they will also want to win Penang. Can you imagine, right, if you win Penang and Selangor together, right, you not only control the political biosphere, you control the economic biosphere as well.
Yeah. That's right. So how about Malacca? What do you think is going to happen in Malacca? Do you think the partnership between PN and BN going to continue?
Yes.
Absolutely. That talking to BN, isn't it?
Look, once you found the secret sauce and you know it works very well, why would you want to change it? So they're definitely going to work very well. The argument now in Malacca is whether the Malacca CM is willing to call for election. The only reason he will call for election is if he can increase the number of UMNO seats. Otherwise, there's no point, right? So we have to wait on the decision he made. I thought that he would pull the trigger on election night, but something held him back. I do not know what held him back. But now, he and Zahid are saying exactly the same thing. We will talk to everybody. We're happy to, work out the details. But we already know they've already secured an agreement with PAS. So there's really nothing to talk about.
Why do you think he's saying that then, Zahid?
You have to ask him to appear on your podcast.
Okay, my next question to you. We saw what happened in Negeri Sembilan, where on one end the government is formed by a majority Malay excos, and the opposition is formed by a majority non-Muslim kind of YBs. Do you find that concerning?
Not really. If you remember, right, people have very short memories. We had a very strong Melayu government from 2020 to 2023, right, under the old Perikatan government when Muhyiddin and Ismail Sabri, they were basically heading a Malay strong government or Malay-centric government, right? I'm not too worried about that. You have to remember, as long as there's a strong Chinese business community, they have to talk to the business community because it's the business community who will pay the taxes, the money for the government to run. That is not the issue. The issue today in Malaysia, right, is the rights of the minorities, not so much in the economic sphere, right, but in the cultural and political sphere. And if you don't have a voice in those two areas, that's where all the problem starts. Okay? So you can see, right, all the major big political issues that happened in the last year, right, is all directly linked either to political Islam or cultural issue or linguistic issue. Very few are actually linked to economic issues. Because economic issues are fairly, how should I put it, very easy to resolve. I'll just give you an example, right? Say the government has a 100 billion project to build a bridge or new highway, whatever it is, right? So if there's an argument, right, then you carve it up. You carve it up into 6 or 7 packages. One package to Chinese conglomerate, one package to Indian conglomerate, the other 5 packages to Malay conglomerate.
No, never Indian.
That's maybe half a package to Indian. But my point is that you can carve it up easily, right?
Okay, yeah.
it's not like temple issue. You cannot
Okay,
take half a temple, right? It's just
okay,
not
yeah, yeah,
possible.
get it.
You know what I mean? So economic
I
issues
get
can
what
be
you mean.
resolved easily. So it is not that I worry too much about minority interests. They will take they will take into account the minorities. And my question is that the minority interests are not on the main table. That is a concern for me.
Okay, all right, but yeah, I want to throw another argument to you as well. For me, I believe that the non-Muslim community, especially in Johor and Negeri Sembilan, they wanted to just punish Pakatan Harapan. And that is why they voted against Pakatan Harapan. It is not because they are giving their support for Barisan Nasional. It's purely just to give a tight slap on Anwar and all the other leaders. In fact, that's why I'll say Anthony Lok lost China. It's because the Chinese community over there were very angry because of the lack of reforms done by DAP and their silence as well. So isn't this happens in small league state elections, but when it comes to say GE, things change. The Chinese community understand the big picture. They do not want to be to be controlled or managed by a Kotonan Melayu kind of a government, and obviously Sabah Sarawak as well will not be agreeable for a Kotonan Melayu government to be taking care of Malaysia. Don't you think the voting pattern will change when it comes to, say, a GE itself?
This is where I think I need to school you in basic mathematics. Assuming you are correct, right? Assuming you are correct, that in the GE, all the non-Muslims or all the minorities come together and support DAP, right? The maximum number of seats they can win is 43.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
All
you
right.
know, right, the number of rural Malay majority seats is double of the urban seats.
Okay.
So
That
even
now
if
I'm going to throw another argument.
so
Now I'm
more
ready to
is
throw
that
another argument on you.
even if all the non-Muslim, all the minorities come together support DAP, right? Their numbers
Yeah.
will still be less of the KMI group.
Okay, all right. Now I'm going to throw another argument with you.
Yes.
So I'll say this: PAS and UMNO, they both come from the same perut. I mean, ideologically they are the same.
No, different. Ideologically, they're different. Sorry.
Idea was they cater to the Malay community, the Islam community. They want the same parliament seat. They want the same base as well. Now, when it comes to GE, I don't think so. Barisan just wants to contest maybe 20 or 30 seats only. They probably want to swing further and try to capture as many seats as possible to form, if possible, a government on their own. Don't you think the partnership that they have, whether informal or formal later on, will break by the time GE happens?
No, it will not. Because their aim of capturing the government, getting rid of Anwar, right? The hate towards Anwar, Pakatan, and DAP is strong enough to hold them together. The question is that what happens after the election, not before the election.
Okay.
Like I said to you, right? The only kantau in town is always the federal government. Everybody wants to be part of the federal government. So while your logic is correct on paper, in reality, that's not how it works in Malaysian politics. In Malaysian politics, it's about control of government and control of resources.
Okay, all right. So where do you think the direction of the country is heading? I mean, do you say Malaysia is then becoming more Islamist, then more Malay nationalist under, say, the current government itself under Anwar, rather than how it was been under, say, Najib before this? And this is an irony because Anwar promises reform. So where do you think we are heading right now?
Anwar promises reform, but then I think it's clear, everyone, including you, agree with me that it's not reformati.
Yeah, correct. So can we say the Malaysian Madani vision that he promised us is quite dead?
The vision he gave us was thrown into the rubbish bin on the first day he arrived in Putrajaya. So let's not go down that road. Now, in terms, you're asking me to make a prediction of which way Malaysia is heading. I think it's not fair for me to say now until we get the results of GE 16. Then I'll be happy to come back here the day after the election and talk about where I think the country is heading.
Okay, Prof, I want to go into my favorite topic, the Indian community itself. Now, we know what the Malays are doing, we know what the Chinese are doing as well. What do you think is happening with the Indian community?
Okay.
Are they becoming politically irrelevant right now?
Sure. I think being a non-Indian, I respect and say, I'm not a member of the community. I don't have the lived experience. But being somebody who studies Malaysian contemporary history and watching Malaysian for a very long time, I think it's important before I give you my views, I need to explain to you where my views is coming from now. Okay? So the first thing I want to say is about the marginalization of the Indian community. And I want to split them up. This is my what do you call it? My perspective as a professional political scientist. So if you want to talk about the marginalization of the Indians, I think whether you like it or not, you have to split it in two distinct phases. The political one and the economic one. Now, in terms of politics, I think it is very clear that the Indians have always felt marginalized from day one, 1957 onwards, because they never had a so-called Indian majority seat and all that sort of thing. Now, we know, right? Secondly, what people don't realize, the Indians have never held more than 8 or 9% of the seats in the one rakyat. People always talk about the first one, but not the second one. The second thing, the third thing that's happened politically is that the Indian used to be quite large in numbers at the lower ranks of the civil service. That has totally bypassed them, right? So they're very, very small in the civil service now. So what happened is that ordinary Indian cannot go to a government counter and get help anymore. So that is the reason why even people like Najib recognize it, and that's the reason why he had to create a special department called Mitra to reach out to the Indian community. Because if the civil service can provide service delivery, you don't need a thing like Mitra, right? It defies common sense, okay? And because of all these issues, the Indians in 2026 has a very, very weak bargaining power. The only bargaining power the Indian has is a repeat of Hindraf. Because Hindraf was really a show. I don't want to use the word Indian power because that is the wrong word to use. But it is a show of Indian frustration across the board, right? And it was very, 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 very powerful signal to the government. Now, I want to say one more thing politically about the marginalization of the Indian. And this is controversial, but again, I'm giving you my professional opinion. You don't have to agree. I think the Indian community was damaged politically by semi-value. Most people don't realize, right? This is the guy, right, who was the longest serving MIC president. He served for 29 years. He served for 31 years as the president, and he served 29 years in the federal cabinet. So this is one entire generation. This man, like Mahathir, who was there for a long time, right? His control over MIC become personalized. So it's not MIC party, it's Sami Value party. Okay, you don't agree with me, but my point is this, right? Because his shadow was so big in MIC, there was no space for alternative younger Indians to come out and no space for alternative Indian voices. Now, most people don't know, he was so well connected that even after he left cabinet in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, you need to double check the date, he was appointed special envoy to South Asia with ministerial rank, right? So this shows you, right, the entire focus on the government, whenever it came to Indian issue, they always consult semi-value, a one-man show. And that, to me, right, something is very wrong. So the Indian community has a reckoning about how did this thing happen? How did you allow one person to dominate you for the entire generation? Now, in terms of the economic side marginalization, I think, again, you cannot run away from history. The biggest problem the Indian faced, the so-called Indian underclass, the biggest problem they faced was the shift in the Malaysian economy when a lot of the plantation was sold and consolidated. They never took account of the Indian community living in the plantation. So when these people were moved to the urban area, right, there was no support system put in place. Again, a lot of this was done during Sami Value's time, okay? And what happened was that they were not given support, but most importantly, the younger ones were not given a choice of going to vocational education. Obviously, they're not in the academic route. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We cannot put them to university, but at least help them in vocational education. The government never did all those things. So interestingly, because the government didn't help them to take the vocational route, the only route available to them was to hook up with the Chinese gangsters. So it's quite interesting, right? If you look at the history of the Indian community, right? I mean, if I'm wrong, you tell me I'm wrong. But my understanding was that suddenly there were lots of Indian gangs. But if you look at the Indian gangs, all the bosses were Chinese.
That's right, of course. Of course.
So you can see, right? If we had given them some training to be electricians, plumbers, or whatever, right?
Correct.
That route would
Yeah.
not have been available to them. So
Correct.
so in this case, right, you have to ask the question: what was Sami Valley doing in cabinet all this while? The second point about the economy is that there are quite a number of tycoons in the Indian community, but they could never pool their resources together like the Chinese. The Chinese set up cooperative bodies, all these things to help the fellow Chinese businessmen. But somehow the Indian tycoon could never bring themselves together to work together. Now, you can argue all sorts of reasons, caste, the divide between Indians and Sri Lanka. You can tell me all sorts of reasons, but my point is this.
Uh,
These people may be divided, right? But surely they can come together and say, let's do something for the Malaysian Indian community. If each of us give in $10 million, right, we could have easily, get 60 or something, because there are 6 or 7 big tycoons now. We can easily set up a fund, 70 million, set up everything. And in fact, their attitude was, I wash my hands because Simon Bellew is number one, let him look after it. Do you know what I mean? This sort of attitude. So this is why I brought up the name of Sami. I'm bringing up Sami Bellew's name not because I'm criticizing him. I'm just describing a period where this thing actually happened. People did not want to touch Indian issues because they left everything to him. And if he didn't touch the issue, the Indians were completely marginalized. So now I've set the settings for the political marginalization and the economic marginalization. So the question you asked me is that what to do about the Indian community? My answer is very simple. The government must step in and create a mini new economic policy just for the Indian community. But unlike the Malay one, this one must have a starting date and an ending date with very, very clear outcomes. So you cannot have an open-ended one. Don't repeat the mistakes of the 1971 NEP. This one, you say you're going to have a very targeted approach. For example, things like the Mara Kemahiran skill, right? You're going to reserve a certain number of seats for the Indian. Even if they don't qualify under SPM, let them in. But made it very clear, this special entrance is only for the next 5 years until 600 electricians are trained or whatever it is. And then you need to set up like Mitra, right? Instead of just giving money to startup and project, right? One of the problems in Malaysia, which people don't talk about, Malaysia is a highly, highly regulated society. You are a multiple businessman, right? You know what I mean, right? Everything in Malaysia, right, requires paperwork. And if you don't come from the right education, it's impossible for you to do the paperwork. So you need an organization that help them to get all the licensing and everything and sort of mentor them through the process. Because the Malay community have GLC to mentor them, as you know, right? The Indian community don't have a similar organization. You see, one of the problems with it's not the Indian community, but one of the narratives coming out of the Indian community is always that we need more money from the government, more money from the government, more money for project. In fact, that is not the outcome what you want. What the outcome you want is the number of Indian electricians, plumbers, all these things who are from the previous generation who got caught in the shift from the estate to the urban areas. You want to rescue that group because they really need help now, you see. After the examples in gangsterism, all that sort of thing, it never led them anywhere. It made them into a really, really, for lack of a better word, they are really, even below the B40. You really need to step in, and the only people can step in are the government. There is no other organization that can step in to help them. So that is my position.
Okay, of course. So we do know that, I just want to close this MIC, wrap it up nicely. We do know MIC got kicked out in 2018 together with Barisan National Government, and for about a few years now, they have been on silent, quiet mode. But if you notice the Johor election and obviously Negeri Sembilan election, they had a renaissance of sort because they have been elected back into the government. What do you think about that? Do you think that is people supporting MIC back as new leaders coming up? Or do you just think that is just, an anomaly of sort?
No. So I think several things are happening. One is, I agree with you, some of them vote for Barisan because, like you said, that was a protest vote. Secondly, I think MIC benefited from this past UMNO combo. You know how the past people also supporting the Dutching. If you vote for Dutching, you actually voting for MIC. So I think there was an element of that. The third element was that places like Johor, right, the MIC that got elected, right, those are really grassroots politicians. If you look at those people there, they work really hard. Look, MIC and MCA can make a comeback. But the problem for me is not so much how many of them are elected. The question is that if you have a full Malay pass UMNO Melayu-centric government, right, you don't have a chair on the main table. How are you going to
Yeah.
deal with the interests of your community? So I don't mean to
All
be
right.
racist here. I'm not saying that the Malays I'm saying that the Malays have lots of problems, the Indians have lots of problems, the Chinese have lots of problems. But if you are not
Okay.
on the main table, right, your issues do not float to the surface, and people, if the senior politicians don't talk about it, right, nothing gets done. Because the civil service only serves the top politician, as you know.
Okay, Professor, we spoke endlessly about Semenanjung. Let's now go to Borneo now. As a Borneo Sabah Sarawak specialist, what do you think about the Malay tsunami uh, over there in Sabah and Sarawak? Does it even apply there?
It doesn't apply there. Obviously, the Malay tsunami will stop. It will start all the way from Perlis,
At the waterways.
stop at the causeway to Singapore. The Singaporeans have
Okay.
already built a barrier there, so the Singaporeans are safe. This Malay tsunami
Okay.
cannot cross the South China Sea. But let me end by saying about. I think it's important for your viewers to
Yeah.
understand where the people of Sabah and Sarawak are coming from. So
Okay.
the sort of consensus view is that Malayan politics is becoming more toxic.
Okay.
And then this racial and religious thing has sort of gotten out of hand in the last few years.
Of
So
course.
thinking among the political elites of Sabah and Sarawak is that Malaysia is heading towards a country where there are three bubbles and there are no common space left. Okay, the first
Okay.
bubble is the KMI bubble, Ketuhanan Melayu Islam bubble. The second is
Okay.
the non-Muslim, non-Malay bubble in Peninsular Malaysia. And the third
Okay.
bubble is the Sabah Sarawak bubble. And there
Okay.
used to be a common space where we can work things out, right? Now the thinking
Okay.
is that maybe there's no more common space because there is a strong push in the right wing in all these three communities. They push them so far to the right, they do not want to grant any more concessions. In fact, I can tell you, if you read some of the, I'm sure you do, some of the right wing Malay blogs, they don't, they say openly, China
Pulang.
Pulang
Balik.
Tongsang, all the stuff. That is
Yeah.
a crazy answer. Or you raise the issue, they say Pulang. Either that or
Yeah.
datang.
Even recently in the election as well.
Yes, my point is that that is not an answer to deal with issues, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you can see that a lot of people are doing this, then you realize that it's very difficult for people to talk, and that to me is really unfortunate, lah. Malaysia
Okay.
actually has lots of potential, but somehow
Yeah.
we squander our potential. The final thing I want to say in this podcast is that be careful about what you wish for, because if you look
Okay.
around us, the
Uh-huh.
Filipinos are getting the act together. The Thais, they've not gotten the act together because
Okay.
of specific issues of military and the royalty. But let's not get into that, okay? The
Same thing goes
Indonesians
in
have
Myanmar
gotten
as
the
well.
act together. You look at the
Yes.
Indonesians; they're part of G20 now. They're the
Yes.
boys club. They don't care about you anymore. And you
No.
look at the Vietnamese, right? We used to laugh at them, right? They've gotten
They're
the
up
act
there right
together.
now.
Yeah, they got the act together. All right. So while Malaysia, especially Peninsular Malaysians, are quarreling about whether this is an Islamic state, whether there's such thing as halal rubbish and what have you, right? I think one day you wake up and you'll be very surprised that last time you used to laugh at the Filipinos and the Vietnamese, now they're laughing at
Uh-huh.
you.
Yeah, yeah. I think we'll be the one getting going over there to work there as maids and and cleaners. That's it. But that said, though, that is usually a Semenanjung issue. I see the Sabah Sarawakian politician, they don't care about that. All they ask for is MA 63, and can you finish it by December?
Yes, yes. The bad news that the core issues of MS63 cannot be resolved by December. So, for example, right, it's well
Okay.
known that Sabah and Sarawak want the oil rights to be reverted back to them. That is not
Yep.
possible because the PDA 74 is still a valid law. So that is not
Okay.
possible. So things like they want the continental shelf to be reverted back to them, that is not possible. So some of the smaller issues can be resolved, but the core issues cannot be resolved. But like I said, the view from East Malaysia is that let's do as much as possible our own thing and make sure the West Malaysian toxic politics doesn't reach our shore. So the good news is
Okay.
that the Malay tsunami will not reach Sarawak, highly
Uh-huh.
unlikely to reach Sabah. So
Uh-huh.
you guys have to think seriously, what are you going to do about the Malay tsunami?
All right, that's good. Thank you. Professor, one final word. Do you have anything to say to our viewers who are watching this show?
I think it's really, really important that people from all the three core communities, political communities, the Malays, the Chinese, and the Indians, and other minorities, right? You need to come together and say that we agree on the minimum for Malaysia. We all have our own, interests, what have you, everything. But what is the minimum that we want? And the minimum what we want is how Malaya was formed in 57 and how Malaysia was formed in 63. What was the minimum? I think the minimum was that we want to live and let live, and we want a prosperous country. And if you cannot see that, and if you allow the politicians to take away that vision of what Malaysia should be, then we are in big trouble. Because the politicians always want to take extreme position. Because for politicians, right, their KPI is very simple. I just want to win next election and get into government.
Correct. That's right. And probably get some few licenses here and there. So with that said, Professor, thank you so much. We had a good, engaging interview today. I had a lot of insight from you, especially on the elections and what do you think is going to happen. I have one final question for you, though.
Final. Already final.
Final one, right? As an academic who's very, very outspoken about Malaysian politics, especially from Australia, do you ever self-censor? Or do you worry about what you said? Do you worry about what you're saying over there will bite your ass when you come back to Malaysia?
No, I actually come back to Malaysia very often. It's just that I don't tell people when I'm in Malaysia.
Good one. Good one. So with that, thank you so much.
Yeah. Let me just answer you seriously. I strongly believe in transparency. The fact that I'm willing to tell people my real name, my real picture, everything, right? It shows you a level of sincerity. I'm not a cyber trooper. I'm not hiding behind a fake name. And everything I write is easily accessible on the internet. If you want to look for me, just type my name in and ResearchGate. Everything I've ever published is there. And every interview I've actually done, including with yours, is on the YouTube site. So everything is out there. I don't hide anything. In fact, a lot of things I said, there's nothing to hide, because a lot of things I said, you are already thinking about it already. It's just that maybe I articulate it better than you, that's all. Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. So, Professor, thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed this interview. Please do come back on the show once again. I think Melaka going to start soon, and we'd like to hear about your prediction then as well.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor. Have a good one. Bye-bye.